think as the previous two times when I shared, I just really just want to just kind of speak from my heart, if that's okay. And I just feel like many of us, I keep using the word process, but I can't seem to get away from it because it is just the only word that I know how to use to explain God's pursuit of us, His relentless pursuit of our heart. And I know, Mark, I was thinking about some of the stuff that even you and I talk about, but what I've learned is that He is relentlessly pursuing our heart, and just when you think you've sort of hit a place in that, He goes even deeper. And I think for me, in this past year, I have just been shockingly surprised in a good way just how deep this process goes. And what's interesting is the process goes very deep, but then when you get to a certain place, you just realize that it even goes even deeper. And I don't know to what extent that sort of stops. If it does, I don't think it does. But I just want to share a little bit about that this afternoon. So, yeah, I'm just going to be kind of pouring from my heart. So I'm going to be referencing a little bit from the Song of Solomon or the Song of Songs. And I have not, if I'm being honest, taken a deep dive in Song of Songs, but I just remember I was just sort of talking through with myself and with the Lord some things that have been in my heart, and the place where I was able to find language for it was in Song of Songs versus sort of going in Song of Songs and like, oh, wow, it was, I couldn't find language for some things until, and then I opened up Song of Songs and was like, wow, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Partly because my background, I have a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in sociology, and I'm wrapping this all in, but I'm fascinated with people and why we do the things that we do. This topic, it's not necessarily spiritual, but it just intrigues me. I'm fascinated about it. When I worked in sort of the corporate world, I love the dynamics of walking into a meeting room and just seeing the different parts that people play in the room. You know, the different, in some ways, postures that people take. I find that sort of thing fascinating, and maybe being in New York too, just really loving, just intrigued around why people do what they do. And I think about even some of the shows I watch, which maybe I shouldn't name any, but it oftentimes has to do with this component of why people do what they do. I'll just share that now because there's a show that Lanaire and I watch called, I watch it. It's called Married at First Sight, which is this show where they, yeah, I know. I know. But they take these couples and they get married and they meet each other for the first time, and they're supposed to go through this process to see if their marriage is going to last. And it's quite funny because, again, it's just fascinating to see why people do what they do and behave in the way that they behave. And also, in my work history, I worked in mental health and in the substance use world for quite some time, and right now I work as you guys know, in a ministry, a job where we send missionaries. It could be considered like a ministry position, if you will, where they send global workers all over. And it's fascinating to me because I remember when I worked in the mental health world and I was meeting with people who experienced some sort of crisis or who have really been through a struggle, that there was sort of an open honesty because of their brokenness. There was a transparency that they came to because they really were seeking help. And then in that area or that arena, there's something called, you guys probably heard of it, like AA or NA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And in those, many of our clients or the folks we supported went through AA, and in there's some tenets that sort of promoted honesty. So one of those things would be, one of those steps, as they call them, a part of that was being brutally honest, in a sense, with yourself. And another part of that would be, having someone who you're accountable to. And so I have sort of this work experience where I worked in that arena and just saw how real and transparent many people how easy it was to become in sort of that community. And then I found that sometimes in a ministry context, just how hard sometimes you almost get the reverse. Because sometimes our ministry construct, I'm just talking about sort of at large, promotes sort of this environment where you can't really produce that level of authenticity. And so I sort of had this work experience of working that back to back, like 8 years in this arena and then a few years here, and you just realize that you'd be surprised oftentimes at the places where you would find genuine honesty and other times where you wouldn't. And so, and that's a little bit what I'm going to share about. So I'm going to just write some thoughts down, some thoughts that I wrote down. So one thing that I wrote down was, Jesus is committed to drawing closer to the real you, to who we really are. And so, and in this year sort of process that I've been on, I noticed that he's coming after anything in us that is not truly authentic. And the way I wrote this down is I said, this is what I wrote, he is violently coming after the parts of us that prevent us from receiving his love. I'm going to say that again. He is violently coming after the parts of us that prevent us from receiving his love. And then I wrote this down. I said, he's committed to coming after any trace of the imposter on the inside of me, the part of me that still operates in fear, the part of me that has erected defense mechanisms, the part of me that still operates in distrust. These also include different wounds in our soul. And I said, I was shockingly surprised to learn just how deep Jesus wanted to go. And so these were just some things in like my own little personal journal, and that's where I said, I started going into Song of Solomon and saw some of what my heart, I guess, was trying to express. And so I'm going to turn there. This is the Passion Translation to Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 8. Song of Solomon 2 and 8. Let me just read some of this. So it says, now, again, I have not done a deep dive in Song of Songs, but I do know that there is sort of this exchange between the Shulamite and the bridegroom. So this sort of dialogue or back and forth, some people, you could almost equate that to, that is, the bride and the bridegroom sort of having this dialogue. Or in this case, it could be the inner core of our being having this longing relationship with the Lord, as some of the old early church writers would say. So in this case, this is the Shulamite, and so it's saying, this is verse 8, listen, I hear my lover's voice. I know it's him coming to me, leaping with joy over mountains, skipping in love over the hills that separate us to come to me. Let me describe him. He is graceful as a gazelle, swift as a wild stag. Now he comes closer, even to the places where I hide. And I just want to read that last part again. He says, now he comes closer, even to the places where I hide. And there was something about that particular line that struck me, because I wrote this down. Again, I'm sort of a little all over, just going between some of what I've written in my journals and then this. But I said to myself, I could recall there have been seasons of times with the Lord where I felt like I was pursuing him as much as I was also resisting him. And I've said that in previous messages, where I felt that in my heart I was going after him, but I could feel this part of me that just sort of tensed up and recoiled in the process as well. It's almost like it's interesting, because when we go through these processes with the Lord, which is not all the time comfortable, it's almost like someone could unzip you and sort of like look into the inside of your inner being. And I think he loves it. I think he loves doing that to us. And he's committed to doing that to us. There's a movie called The Matrix. It's one of my favorite movies. And at the end, anybody know The Matrix? Yes, classic. Last one was not that good. Yeah, it was not that good. And and at the end of the first movie, though, Neo runs into the agent, gets on the inside of him, and just kind of blows him up from the inside out. And that was this picture that I have of just sometimes our relationship with the Lord, where he just is so committed to going so far on the inside of us to just really take anything out that doesn't belong. And so I found that during certain times of this process, I would be pursuing the Lord, but that there was something in me that would also be resisting him. And so this is what Brian Simmons writes. This is from The Sacred Journey. He says, talking about the Shulamite, her wall of self-protection has become her wall of hiding. When we put walls to protect us from pain, we are actually shutting ourselves off from the presence of the healer. But even our well-constructed hiding places will not hinder him. He will come and stand outside, waiting for us to yield to him. In this new season of maturing love, the bride will be challenged to leave her hiding place to run with him. And when we hide, we only see what is inward. Seeing ourselves only causes us to retreat even deeper. We begin to notice inside of us all the things that shut him out and have kept us from sacred intimacy with Jesus. And that just, when I read that just sort of exploded on the inside of me, because I could relate to some of that. But it's something that I always knew, but I think what the shift is realizing that we are loved by him, and that is this whole thing that I read is actually an invitation to come closer. It's not his displeasure that's pushing us away. And so when you ground it on that, and when you embrace that, then you it's easier, let me say it this way, to surrender to that process. And I notice things about people, and I notice this about myself, I notice things about people that we have, there's a picture that I like that sort of demonstrates this. And so we use this in behavioral health or mental health. So where it's, you guys seen this. This is supposed to be a iceberg, and so where it's just this little piece that lies above the surface, and then it's massively huge underneath. And many times, something like this will just be like our action or, the words we say or whatever the case might be. And then the things underneath are oftentimes like our belief, our wounds, things from childhood, our hurts, our pains, our prejudices, whatever the case might be, often lie underneath. And many times we are so focused on this that we miss this part right here. And the Lord is so committed to us maturing in our process or becoming so close to him that he is so committed to really loving this part of us so that it's life, so that it produces life. I think about, I was just thinking about this. I thought about when Linaire and I first started dating, we didn't have a father in our life. And so, we did like sort of the traditional dating thing. And so dating is an interesting thing. Again, it's going back to my love for why we do what we do. And it's interesting because I remember, I saw Linaire. We worked at the same building. I saw her. Hallelujah. And I worked for the corporate, it was a bank. They had a corporate headquarters, and so they had a full-fledged gym. They had like a cafeteria, and I remember seeing her from across the way. I did see her at the gym, just saying. And, I just remember this, no joke, I remember like lifting weights, like on the bench machine. Sorry, it's been a while. And I just remember lifting weights, and I remember my colleagues who I was working with, they were like, "There she is! Come on, you could do a few more." And I just remember somewhere, somehow, I pulled on this internal strength that was on the inside. But it's pretty funny. And I just remember, but there's this element of, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's really, it's great. But there's this element of we want to show our best self, we create ourself that we want to portray, and so So, we did all that. We sort of showed our best self, right? And then as we started dating, things got serious, got engaged, and we didn't live with each other until we were married, and then got married. Then you get to start to see other areas of each other, right? We know what we look like in our true form, right? We notice that morning breath is a real thing. Hallelujah. Not that she has it or myself, but just saying. No, just kidding. But the beautiful thing about our relationship with the Lord is He wants us for who we are. He wants all of that. Amen. He's okay with us taking off and just coming to Him in our true self, so that He could begin to minister to that part of us. And yeah, this is where I was going with that. That's pretty funny, that detour. So what I've learned is that we tend to have, I heard it said a number of different ways, again, just working in mental health. Where I've done some counseling, where we have our upper consciousness and lower consciousness. In other words, there's things that we do that we're aware of on the surface, but much of what dictates our behavior are things that we may not even be aware about. We don't even know within ourselves. And that's the thing. It's one thing when you sort of know, you're going through something, you sort of realize, okay, I know I got a sugar craving. I need to sort of address that. I like creamer in my coffee, a lot of creamer, and so you're committed. But it's another thing when there's things that you're not even aware of. And this is where it takes the help of the Holy Spirit. And this is where, when we begin to allow ourselves to yield to the process of drawing close to Him, He is committed to bringing these things into light. He is committed to bringing these things into light. And again, it's not from a place of shame. It's from a place of where He wants to begin to minister to those parts of us. And I love this. I want to turn to Matthew 26 and 31 real quick, because I think this is a great picture to me of sort of this believing something, but not really understanding, sort of believing something in your higher consciousness, but not necessarily your lower consciousness. Now, I don't know if I would use those words necessarily, but it's just the only way that I know how to explain it. We're aware of certain things that we do, and then there's a part of us that we're really not aware of. And it comes through a number of ways that the Lord will reveal those things to us. And so in Matthew 26 and 31, now this is after the Passover meal, and this is when Jesus is predicting how the disciples are going to deny Him. Verse 31, it says, "Then Jesus said to them, 'All of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee.'" And verse 33, I really love this verse. "Peter answered and said to him, 'Even if you are all made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble.'" Verse 34, Jesus said to him, "Assuredly I say to you that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And verse 35, Peter said to him, "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all of the disciples. Now, I believe in my heart that when Peter said those words, I believe that he believed that with all of his heart. I don't think there was any pure motive. I don't think he was sort of posturing up. I think when he said those words, he truly meant that with every fiber in his being, that, Lord, listen, when it goes down, I am not going to deny you. And I find that oftentimes we also can sort of have some of those similar experiences. I think that's why pressure or struggles is an interesting thing, because sometimes it's those pressures and those struggles that actually begin to filter out or reveal some of those things in our heart, where on the surface we just know we're not, that's something that I don't struggle with, that's something that would never bother me, but then something begins to happen that begins to filter those things out. Right, and so we see this time and time again. That's why, you would see this these encounters that Jesus would have with people. And it was so fascinating because without fail, he would begin to reveal this part of them, where oftentimes the Pharisees and religion would begin to sort of focus on this part. And, it's very interesting. In Luke, I believe it's 18 and 19, in Luke 18, you have the story of the rich young ruler who comes to Jesus, says, "What must I do to have eternal life?" And he says, they go over those things. He says, "All of this I've done." And then Jesus says, "Well, go sell all that you have and come and follow me." And he walked away sorrowful, right? What did Jesus do? He exposed something in his heart, right? He was looking at the rich young ruler. Hey, I've done these things. And then Jesus, what did he do? He came right for the jugular, right here. And he was not able to follow him, right? And then just shortly after that is the story of Zacchaeus, who sees Jesus, and he has this encounter with Jesus, and he says, "You know what? I'm going to pay back everyone who I wronged 4 times over and give half of my goods away." He has this encounter, and something begins to happen at this level. And he is committed, and I see this process in us as a family, in me, and in many, that he's committed to coming after this. Now, Brian Simmons, when he wrote that part in The Sacred Journey, he said there's something that's very interesting. He says, when we put our walls to protect us from pain. Something stood out about that, and I was, something for work, I started looking up defense mechanisms just in general, just what are defense mechanisms. And just in general, because you can go very exhaustive on this, these are systems of thinking or things that we have established most times in early childhood to protect us. It was made to protect us from our interactions with other people and for ourselves. And what's fascinating is that things that we were created and even built in our life to protect us are things that, if we're not careful, are the very things that create a barrier between us and our relationship with the Lord. Now, let me give you a few examples. Now, again, when I say that word, don't get so disconnected from that. I just want you to listen to some of these because I think we could relate to these. In this article on defense mechanisms, it says, in most cases, these psychological responses are not under a person's conscious control. This means they don't decide what you do when you do it. So going back to, remember, again, things that we're aware of and things that we're not aware of, oftentimes these things that we call defense mechanisms lie in these parts right here that we oftentimes can't see. Some of this will sound familiar to you. I was just reading and I said, it's just lists some familiar ones out. So denial. You block external events or circumstances from your mind so that you don't have to deal with the emotional impact. In other words, you avoid the painful feelings or events. I've known many people like that. Again, I'm sort of looking at my life where I've worked in this mental health arena, and then I've worked in this Christian context, and it was very fascinating that in the mental health side, they are very committed to sort of going to the root of those things. Now, without having the spiritual element to it, so it could only go but so far. But there was an honesty and openness to sort of be transparent to deal with those things. And I've been caught in that position. But I just think of, as I read some of these, some of this may ring a bell, and it may ring true to you or just people that you know. You block external events or circumstances from your mind so you don't have to deal with the emotional impact. You ever been around people and they're just like, hey, this is just one area where we don't talk about? I know I have family members where we could talk about believers, where we could talk about every single thing, but we're going to leave this part right here. We don't even touch that area. And I think about, do we do that with the Lord? Do we have this walk with the Lord where, Lord, you can live in my house. You can come in any single room, but not this room right here. Another one of these is repression. So it says, unsavory thoughts, painful memories, or irrational beliefs can upset you. Instead of facing them, you may unconsciously choose to hide them in hopes of forgetting about them entirely. That does not mean, however, that the memories disappear entirely. They may influence behaviors and they may impact future relationships. You just may not realize the impact this defense mechanism is having. And I with this one, I remember there's a pastor that I know where during this season of ministry, there was this particular pastor and his wife were not being intimate with one another. And, they were ministering, they were preaching, they were saving souls, all of that, doing all those things, but there was, they were not expressing intimacy with one another. And I remember after talking with them that there was a situation where the wife in that case had been abused when she was younger. And because of that abuse, it overflowed into her now current marriage with her husband. And it was a situation as such where, from talking to the both of them, she may not have even realized it because it didn't come out across that way. It was just, I'm tired, I'm too busy, or whatever the case might be. And so you see that time and time again where there's something we sort of repress, and then we're not aware of it, and it dictates our behaviors up here. Right? Projection. Again, some of these I'm sure sound familiar either to yourself or to just, family, friends, people that we love. Some thoughts or feelings that you have about another person that can make you uncomfortable. If you project those feelings, you're misattributing them to the other person. You're misattributing them to the other person. That's easy. If I could relate to that early even in my marriage. There were times where, because I felt rejection early in childhood, that when I would feel or project rejection to those who were closest to me. Right? This is very common stuff. And I'm not trying to sort of share this for no reason. I'm trying to share this because you may find yourself in this process with the Lord. And again, because of his goodness, he is committed to sort of just dealing with all of those things, right? So projection. It's interesting. The pastor friend who I mentioned before, I noticed that there were times where he would come across very judgmental. Every little thing, just very judgmental. And it's fascinating because when you watch people long enough, what you can learn is that the very judgment that person was giving off was just truly how they felt about themselves. It's the projection of how they felt God was doing to them is what they were doing to someone else. Right? That's why this is so important. Leadership and authority. If you've been through an experience where you had a bad experience with someone in authority, you can project that. Right? So these are some things. So defense mechanisms. And so, again, these were just some things that I know that he is committed to coming after. What should our natural response be? Our natural response should be to run towards him. So what should we do, right? So let's bring this back just a little bit. So if Jesus is committed to coming after the parts of us that prevent us from receiving his love, then what should our response be? Let me sort of bring this home a little bit. Why did I share all that? Why did I share all this? Why did I share all these different things that we may experience? What should our role be? Let me go to back to Song of Solomon. This is chapter 2. I read 8. Verse 9, let me describe him. He is graceful as a gazelle, swift as a wild stag. Now he comes closer, even to the places where I hide, right? He gazes into my soul. Oh, yeah, when he gets close, it gets close. Peering through the portal as he blossoms within my heart, the one I love calls me. Verses 10 through 14 is this beautiful sort of response from the bridegroom king of how he feels about us. Yeah, I'll read it. Let me just read it. Arise, my dearest, hurry, my darling. come along with me. I have come as you have asked to draw you to my heart and lead you out. For now is the time, my beautiful one. The season has changed, the bondage of your barren winter has ended, and the season of hiding is over and gone. The rains have soaked the earth and left it bright with blossoming flowers. The season for singing and pruning the vines has arrived. I hear the cooing of doves in our land, filling the air with songs to awaken you and guide you forth. Can you not discern this new day of destiny breaking forth around you? The early signs of my purpose and plans are bursting forth. Okay, stay with me. The budding vines of new life are now blooming everywhere. The fragrance of their flowers whispers, there is change in the air. Arise, my love, my beautiful companion, and run with me to the higher place. For now is the time to arise and come away with me. This is beautiful. I mean, if you can't feel secure in that, I mean, that is just... And look at this. This is where we're going. So 14, for you are my dove, hidden in the split open rock. It was I who took you and hid you up high in the secret stairway of the sky. Let me see your radiant face and hear your sweet voice. How beautiful your eyes of worship and lovely your voice in prayer. Now here we go. Verse 15. You must catch the troubling foxes, those sly little foxes, listen to this language, that hinder our relationship. For they raid our budding vineyard of love to ruin what I've planted within you. Will you catch them and remove them for me? We will do it together. I just want to read that last little part again. So hoping this is not all over the place. Let me sort of bring it back. We go through this process with the Lord where sometimes it could be uncomfortable. He's going to show us things. He's going to reveal things to us. He's going to point out things in our heart. I love it. In this last year, it's been beautiful. I've been at work or in different environments, and the Lord will tell me, he'll say, Robert, let me tell you why you do this thing right here that you always do. Yeah. And see, there was a time where something like that would have scared me, or I would have looked at that as rejection, maybe because of undealt with rejection, right? But because of knowing, having the full understanding that this is for the purpose of drawing us closer, when he says something like that to me, let me tell you something, it comes with the full weight of knowing he just wants me to come even closer to him. You know, that's almost like saying, Robert, let me tell you, I love you, and let me show you something that I just want to really refine and perfect in you. It's a whole nother tone. Our perception of God is everything. The lens at which we view him is everything. You know, and so our childhood wounds and things that we have underneath that totally distort our view of God, he is coming after. It's so important. It's so important. And so when he says, and it's been beautiful, he'll come and say, Rob, let me tell you why you do this thing right here. And sometimes it's these little things that you would have no idea. You know what I mean? So it's not sometimes these major glaring things. Sometimes it's these little things that he just says. Let me tell you why. You know, let me show you this right here. Let me do that. And so verse 15, he says, you must catch the troubling foxes, those sly little foxes that hinder our relationship. For they raid our budding vineyard of love to ruin what I've planted within you. And this part I love. Will you catch them and remove them for me? We will do it together. It's something that we do with him. It's something that we do with him. So if Jesus, if he's coming after the part of us that prevents us from receiving his love, what then is our response? And I just wrote a few little things from this verse here. I said, first, we must yield to this fox catching process. We must recognize that catching these foxes is something that we do together. I used to think it was my responsibility to catch them before I approached them. And that's a completely different thought than realizing that this is something that we do together. This is something that we do together. And so with that, I want us to relinquish the temptation to recoil. So I put as a second thing, my responsibility is to be open and honest before the Lord. Do not recoil. And I'm sharing this because I believe that if not now, or it's probably happened in some time in the past, It's probably happening now or sometime in the future. I believe the Lord will just highlight certain things just as we walk with him. And there's two things that you have to know. One, it's in his good pleasure, it's in his goodness, it's because he's passionate about us. And then two, we must yield to that process. You know, we don't make it a big thing. We say, yes, Lord, I see this thing. Right? And we don't recoil at it. We don't shy away from it. The propensity sometimes, if we're still have certain thought processes, is that the thing that he points out becomes the very wall that hinders us from communicating with him. Instead of just not allowing that to be something that pushes us away, but it's the very thing that draws us even closer. Okay? I wrote this down. There's a freedom in coming to him for everything. The psalmist says, pour out your heart before the Lord. There is a freedom. There is a freedom, y'all. There is a freedom when you can come to the Lord fully transparent in everything. I remember, it's so funny to me. This would probably blow some people away. Lenaria goes through my phone all the time. All the time. She picks up my phone and she'll go, I know, babe, but it's working. She goes through my phone all the time. And there's a freedom in just not caring what she goes through and sees on my phone. And I know that there's other people where that may not necessarily be the case, where I know husbands and wives where they may not even know each other's passwords. You know, in the faith. You know, and so, but there's a freedom in just, it doesn't matter. Everything that I am, you see. There's a freedom in that. I'm not perfect in that, but I'm just saying that there's that posture. Everything that I am, you can see. You know, and he's inviting us into that. Another little point that I'm almost done, is realize these foxes are oftentimes not what we think. Realize that these little sly foxes, these things that he may point out, are not oftentimes what we think. And the other part to that is we can't compartmentalize, right? So if our whole life is his, he has full permission to really bring forth any area of my life. You know, and this is what we find. The danger with not understanding that is you can have someone who is walking with the Lord, who is really just has just beautiful relationship with the Lord. But what you find is that there's an area that they keep or conceal from the Lord. And so for many people, including myself, is what I find is that, man, so many things are great, but there's this one little area here. You ever see people at the gym who work out all their body but skip leg day? Yeah, it's sort of the same thing. There's this, you could tell they got the diet, they got everything they got going on, but there's this, it looks funny. My first step is to go to the gym, so I can't talk, but But it's like someone who walks with the Lord, but maybe just has this area that for whatever reason, it could be financial, it could be emotional, it could be, and they know it's a dysfunction. They know it's a cycle that sort of just keeps going on and on and on and on. I've been so guilty of that. That it could be just having a mindset of poverty, you know, and it's every area is flourishing, but there's this one little area that just seems to be dry, and he's coming after that. You know, he doesn't want to he doesn't want a 90% garden. He wants to flourish and be a part of the whole entire thing. That's how committed he is to us. He wants the whole thing. He wants the whole you. He wants the whole you. And so again, there's no compartmentalization with that. And realize these foxes aren't oftentimes what we think. And then lastly, I just want to say, you know, in the beautiful thing, and I always try to wrap this in there because there's safety in this, but it's this whole context of family. You know, when we go through this process and when we become vulnerable with the Lord and one with one another, we're going to see that in one another. Right? Amen. We're going to see that with one another. And it could be so refreshing to be able to have that level of authenticity and intimacy with someone else. But things also get messy. And that's why we need to extend grace to one another. And we have a papa in this house, too, as well. But when we see each other, things can sometimes get messy. All right, so how do I wrap this up? So the way I would wrap this up is this. Again, going back to what we read in Song of Songs, he is wanting all of us. And he wants us to yield to whatever process of surrender that he's asking us to come into. And it all has to be put in the proper perspective of his goodness, of his safety, of his protection, of his love for us. And when that invitation comes, it's very important that we don't recoil or push him away, but that we fully surrender to that process. And again, this looks different in varying degrees with everyone, but at some point, this is going to happen and will continue to happen in your walk with him. He's not satisfied with just having us at 90%. You know, there's something about that thought that you see all throughout Scripture. It's like he won't do it that way. You know, there may be grace for a season. There may be a period of time where just, we're walking with him and certain things happen. But at some point, he's coming after every single part of us, even the parts that we have inadvertently or advertently sort of put to the side. And when he does, I just believe that we will just say yes to that in fullness.